All right, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. My name is Rebecca Griffin, and I am the Student Services and Admissions Officer for Southern College of Optometry, and we're excited to be able to chat with you all for a little while about the field of optometry. As we know, going out on the road and our recruiting efforts, that optometry is certainly not the biggest field in the medical profession, and not every institution has a ton of pre-optometry students that you work with. So we thought we'd give some time to just chat about the field, to give you a little bit more information that then you can feel equipped to provide to your students about the benefits of pursuing the field of optometry, the process for doing so, and what the admissions process looks like for us here at SCO. And with me today, I'm excited to have our Director of Student Recruitment, Sunnie Ewing, and she's going to kick off the presentation talking about the field. I'll follow up by talking a little bit about Southern College of Optometry and the admissions process as a whole. And then, of course, we'll leave plenty of time at the end for any questions that you have. So we encourage you to insert your questions into the questions box or the chat box on the GoToWebinar feature, so that we can get to those at the end and make sure you walk away with all the questions answered that you have in your mind. So again, thank you for being here. And without any further ado, I'll let Sunnie take it away.
All right, well, thank you very much. I saw a few familiar names on the list that's joining us today, and I'm excited to introduce some new folks to the profession of optometry. And I guess we start with what is optometry. And for most of you, the common thing that you know about optometry is which is clear 1 or 2, and here's your prescription. But we here at SCO know that there's a lot more to the profession. Optometrists are the independent primary care providers for the vision system, basically. They are the ones that diagnose and treat a lot of diseases. There's a lot more to optometry than just which is clear in 1 or 2. They treat diseases, and it depends on the state they're in on exactly what they can do, because it is a very legislated profession. But for the most part, anything an ophthalmologist can do, an optometrist can do. So today's Today's doctors of optometry practice in more than 6,000 communities in the United States. And that's a big thing about optometry, is that it is a profession that can be taken into any kind of community. So if you have students that are really interested in returning back to their small communities, they can. They want to live in the big cities, they can. Lots of mission trips can be done with optometry. So it is a profession that can be taken to whatever the student is seeing as being a home size for them. They can take it there. And over 70% of the primary eye care services that are provided are actually provided by optometrists. It's a lot of the vision system works with other parts of the body, so it's not just the eyeballs that they're concerned about. It's through those eye exams a lot of times that the patients first find out they have other kinds of health conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, even brain tumors can be diagnosed just by giving an eye exam. So there's a lot of things that can be done, and they do work hand in hand with all the other kinds of health professionals out there, because you are co-managing a patient's health care overall. There are subspecialties to optometry as well, specialty contact lenses. A lot of people think of their contact lenses instead of glasses, but there's actually things that can be done with specialty contact lenses. One of them is an example of that would be a lot of athletes having contact lenses is not something that's really helpful for them. So there's a special kind of contact lens that they wear at night, and then in the morning they take the contact lenses out, and that they're able to see 20/20 or whatever their prescription is at that level, but they can see more normally without them. So there is a specialization with contact lenses that can go even further than that. Geriatrics and low vision care, that basically works hand in hand with the population and the aging population we're seeing right now. We have the baby boomers that are reaching an age where they're starting to retire, which opens up positions for optometrists, but more importantly, they're becoming a larger patient base too. So with that specialization, you're working with patients. A lot of technology can be used in helping patients, but there's a lot of times when you get to a certain prescription, certain age, it just depends on certain services and ways that they can utilize things and live a healthy, normal life too. Vision therapy, and that's a part of optometry that really gets a lot of people that are non-science majors interested in the profession. So we get a lot of students that come from psychology majors here. And that's basically dealing with the vision system, and it's a way of treating certain conditions without surgery. So it's, to put it in layman's terms, it's like physical therapy for the eyes. You work with a wide range of different patient bases there. You have the younger children. You also have the people that may have had accidents or injuries to their eye and had to readjust to life and find ways to kind of treat their eyes without surgery. Sports vision enhancement, that kind of goes with the specialty contact lens. It's kind of a broader spectrum of that. You're working with athletes and how their eyes are a really important part of basically how they do their job. There's a lot of different things. Here at SCO, we actually work with, we are the primary care providers for the vision system for the University of Memphis Athletic Department. We do a lot of things with the Grizzlies and the minor league baseball team here too. There is, even within that, you can do specializations. There's an optometrist in Tallahassee, Florida, that a lot of the BMX riders across the country go to him because he specializes in vision problems that relate with concussions. So there is a lot of medical side, a lot of things that can be done with the medical side of optometry there. Pediatric vision care, that is a specialization. If you're ever talking to a student that says, I want to be a pediatrician, sometimes they don't realize they can specialize in other areas. And this is actually one that we see a lot of patients here at SCO in pediatrics. Pediatric vision care, you can specialize where all you're seeing is children. I actually had a graduate a few years ago, and her ideal practice she wanted to have was to have a specialty group, which was, I think it was like from the age of 8 to 12. She only wanted to see patients in that age range. But even babies need to have eye care because there's a lot of developmental issues that can be diagnosed just in that first year of their life with an eye exam. So with that, there's also the pre and post operative, working in co-management centers with ophthalmologists. Ophthalmologists make their money doing surgery. Optometrists work hand in hand with them doing the pre-care for the patients as well as the post-operative care. So there's a lot of things that you can specialize with optometry. So talking about ophthalmologists, what are the big differences between optometry and ophthalmology? To begin with, the education is a little bit different. Optometrists go to optometry school for 4 years and then they're done with the academic side of it. They can do a 1-year residency if they want to. That's not required, however. With ophthalmologists, they have to go to medical school for 4 years, and then they do anywhere from 4 to 6 years of additional training, including a 3-year residency and a 1-year internship. So there's a lot more educational side to it, but the big difference is that the education part actually is the same. The big difference is going to be that our clinical education is incorporated in the 4 years that they're actually in school, so they don't have to learn the trade. Basically with the hands-on experience after they've graduated. They're getting that experience, and Rebecca's actually going to talk a little bit about what our students see when they're going through that in just a minute here. Doctors of optometry, optometrists are ODs, and ophthalmologists are MDs or DOs. Optometrists are the primary care providers, while ophthalmologists are considered specialists, and basically that's the big difference on the profession with what they do on a day-to-day basis. If you have a student that is really interested in being a primary care doctor, optometry would be probably a good fit for them. But if they really want to get into the surgery side, ophthalmology is a better fit probably, because that is the big difference. Ophthalmologists do surgeries, and optometrists can do everything else that an ophthalmologist does. Again, guided by their state laws, and there are minor differences. But in the state of Tennessee, pretty much anything an ophthalmologist does, an optometrist can do too. So why should they choose optometry? It's rewarding. It's a rewarding career, and it allows them to actually have that one-on-one patient time, build those relationships, which is also, a big part of being a good doctor these days. I just saw a doctor this morning and can tell you that from experience. But there's so many other reasons I've had students, probably the number one reason over the years that I've had students say that they wanted to choose optometry over medicine is they wanted to be a primary care doctor where they were in charge of their patients' overall health care, but they also had time for their own personal life. They didn't have to worry about being on call as much. There is on call in optometry, but nothing like medical doctors. They can actually be at their children's softball games and piano recitals and things like that, and be an active part of their children's lives while they're growing up. So they're thinking about their personal side of life too. The entrepreneurial side, they like the idea that they can run their own business, because you can run optometry offices in different settings. You have private practice, you have group practice, you have small boutique settings, you have lots of ways you can actually run an optometry practice. And the average salary for optometrists is around $157,000. Now, if they do go into private practice, which allows them that more freedom, they're going to start a little bit lower on the salary scale, but the national average for those that go into private practice is a little bit higher, so around $175,000. So they can live a comfortable life. And again, they're able to start making money after 4 years instead of having to wait for another 4 to 6 years of doing the extra training after med school if they decide to go that route. Very low unemployment rate. One of the stats that we don't have listed up here is that optometrists do have the lowest divorce rate of all the health professions. So that's always a perk for those that are, since they're looking to have a very meaningful family life too. So that's something that plays a big part there. But it does have a great future. It's just this year, it was just a couple of weeks ago, actually, it was rated as among the top 10 jobs period in 2018, and it has a strong growth. A lot of times people think technology is going to take over what optometrists do, but that's actually not the case. If you see those little things or apps on your phone that do an eye exam, they're only giving you a prescription, and there's a lot of data that shows they're giving incorrect data. It's not looking at the health of the eye. It's not able to be there and diagnose those conditions that I mentioned earlier, high blood pressure and all those other things that go along with a healthy person. So it does have a very strong future. And in addition to that, we also have a lot of laws changing. Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Louisiana currently allow optometrists to use lasers. And more states are trying to pass that law too. Actually, this week, a lot of the optometrists, AOA, or American Optometric Association, and a lot of our students in optometry schools are in DC this week, talking to their legislators, trying to get laws passed to help enhance what optometry is and just make sure optometry is not left behind whenever healthcare is going through reform stages and everything. So it does have a very strong profession, a future for the profession. Now, as I mentioned, the first step to becoming an optometrist is to complete the 4-year Doctor of Optometry degree. Hang on just
I'm sorry, just one moment, guys. I think there's a technical issue, so I want to make sure you guys are seeing the screen that we're showing here. I apologize for that issue, and if any of you were just paused on the home screen, I'll make sure to share these slides after the fact so you have some of those statistics that we're speaking about. But I think, let's see here. Okay. So again, my apologies. Let's carry on. All right, I think we're good to go. Okay.
All right. And again, she will post that. So if you didn't get to see the stats about the profession, it'll be on the presentation that's posted. So the first step to becoming an optometrist for us, for any optometry school actually, is to complete the 4-year degree of optometry. And there's 23 schools of optometry currently, so it's not a profession like med school, law schools that have a school on every corner basically these days. There is a very limited number of schools. We are one of the private schools, and we actually the first 2 years of our program is going to be more similar to what you see in med school. It's going to be a lot of emphasis on the biological, anatomy, physiology. Those kinds of classes are things that the students will be taking their first 2 years of our program. There's a lot of pharmacology with optometry as well. We do a very balanced job at SCO where we have 24 hours, I believe, is our first semester that the students have, 24 hours, and it's going to be a lot of courses where it's not only in the lectures, but we also have the labs too. And we do start on day one with theory labs. So they're in the labs learning how to use the equipment and do procedures on day one of our program. So it's a very hands-on program that we have here at SCO. And then also they have to pass national boards and obtain a state license. And for many states, just passing all 3 parts of national boards is all that's required to have a license, in addition to filling out the state paperwork. But there are a handful of states that do have additional state tests too. We try to prepare our students for no matter where they're going back, even though they're here in Tennessee learning, we try to prepare them for wherever they're going to return to. And then again, back to that 1-year residency. If they want to do a 1-year residency, they can. And some students like to do them just because they do have that idea that they want to specialize and have a practice that is very specific to a demographic or a certain specialty area of optometry. Some just want to have that 1 additional year to see a few more patients, or a lot more patients actually, before they actually go into the field. We feel like at SCO we do a good job, but if they do have an idea that they want to go into academic optometry, having a residency is a requirement for that too. And then continuing education hours. We all know about lifelong learning and having to continue taking those classes even after we've got our degrees. So that's something that optometrists have to do as well. Okay, now my keyboard's frozen. Oh, okay. So now we have, as I mentioned, we have 23 schools of optometry. And of those schools, almost half of them are state schools, and the rest are going to be private schools. We're one of the private schools. And if you're advising students about narrowing down the schools of which they apply to, because I have yet to meet anyone that wanted to apply to all 23 schools. Location is obviously one. They often want to be close to home, but playing with location, if they have an idea that pediatric optometry is what they want to do, they want to talk to the schools about what patient basis they're seeing. If they're not seeing a lot of pediatric patients, that can kind of help narrow down which schools they're applying to. With clinical or research, SCO has some research going on. We have it's actually a growing part of our program, but it's not what we're known for nationally. We're definitely known for our clinical program and making sure that we have a very strong clinicians when they graduate. So if you have students that have an idea that they're more interested in research, or if they're more interested in clinical parts, then that can kind of help them narrow down which schools to apply to as well. Then you obviously want to go to a school that you know is going to be preparing you for the future and being able to pass boards and graduate in general. So you do have to pass part 1 and 2 at SCO to graduate. Other schools have different policies, but since you have to pass boards to be licensed, we want to make sure that you're not just graduating, that you're actually graduating and able to be licensed too. Private versus public, there's only 2 schools of optometry left that are optometry only. That's ICO in Chicago and SCO. We actually have no plans to change that in the future. We feel like our students benefit the most from the way our program's set up, with optometrists teaching them and everything. Another benefit for us for being a private school is we don't have the state dictating our budget, telling us what our increases are going to be and things like that. We have complete control over our budget, and it helps. We have the largest optometric center in the country next door. Is a great revenue resource for us too. Our tuition this year was $35,919 per year. Now, it will vary from school to school. If you're looking at a state school, they have in-state and out-of-state tuition. SEO is a private school. The non-regional tuition that I just quoted you, that's our tuition. We do have contracts with certain states that do not have state schools of optometry. And then they allow a limited number of seats coming to us where they will pay for part of each student's tuition. Now, if you are from, let's say, Arkansas, traditionally we have five seats, but I believe we have 13 students coming in this year from Arkansas, so all 13 will not get those seats. 8 of them will pay that full $35,000 plus, while the other 5 will get part of their tuition paid for by the state of Arkansas, and they will only have to pay $18,000 themselves. So the regional seats do play a part. Every school's different on what they offer there. Even the schools that are state or private, they may have contract seats in different ways. Ours is mainly part of an SREB program. The schools out west, they have WICHE seats. So there's different contract programs. So you just want to make sure that they're aware of, what the full tuition is what they should expect, but they might also want to check in with the schools to see what the tuition rates are based on their home state. Now, here's a list that shows you all 23 schools of optometry. As I mentioned, it's not an optometry school on every street corner. We do have them spread pretty well out throughout the country. But there's a lot of places that just don't have optometry schools. And with us, one of the things on this chart, you can find a lot of this information on our websites too, but on this specific chart, we've kind of combined some information. It shows our class size is 136. As you can see, I'll use right above us is Northeastern State in Oklahoma. Their class size is 28. A little bit different in what they're looking at and how their programs are how each of us have our programs laid out when the students get there. You're going to find good programs throughout the country. Hopefully we can lead all of your students to SEO, but we want them to know where they're going is the best fit for them too. A big thing on this chart is that last year was the first year that all optometry schools' national board passage rates were posted on the website for ASCO, which is the Association of Schools and Colleges of Optometry. And we were the only school that had 100% of our students that were in the class of 2017 that passed national boards. And so we're very proud of that. That's another important statistic that can kind of help students know that when they graduate that they are being prepared to practice wherever they want to go to. So those are all important things that they can be looking at. And now I think Rebecca's got some more information for you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sunnie, for outlining that. I'm going to transition a little bit and talk briefly about our program at SEO, really just hitting the highlights because, of course, we could talk at length about everything that goes into our program here, but I just want to hit a few highlights for you and then transition to talk more about the admissions process, which is more or less general to any school of optometry in the country. So hopefully that's valuable information to you all. So Sunnie had mentioned that we are a private single-purpose institution, one of only 2 single-purpose institutions in the U.S. You can see in this photo here, you can see our college campus. The tall tower building is where our academic facilities are located. Our professor offices, our office in student services is at the top there. And then connected to that on the right in this photo is our eye center, which I'll talk about in just a minute here. We are located in Memphis, Tennessee, in what we consider to be the medical district. So if you see in this photo a lot of buildings that look like hospitals, it's because that's exactly what those are. So there is a well-established medical presence in the community, which has an interesting history if you ever look into it. So we are located amongst other health professions, but as a single-purpose institution in Memphis. Being in Memphis means that we are part of a large community, a very diverse community, and we serve those people in our community not only in this eye center here, but in some of our external clinical sites and through other programs service-based as well. So this is a quick snapshot of our student profile, and this is for the group that entered this year, so those that started in fall of 2017. You can see, of course, that we entered 136, and this is on a somewhat larger class size than others out there, but 136 entering students each year on average. You can see the average credentials in terms of what is their cumulative GPA was a 3.56, and then the average OAT score. The OAT score being the optometry admissions test or the standardized entrance test that all students applying to optometry school must take and complete. That test is scored out of 400, and they try to adjust, the test graders try to adjust the test so that the mean score falls around 300. So our average for our entering class was about a 331. And you can see the breakdown here. We do get a lot of what's considered to be the traditional graduate age student, but it ranges to some degree. We get married students, single students. You can see the breakdown of males and females as well. And then a quick note about the statistic you see on the bottom there, that 99% of the class entered with a bachelor's degree or higher. So it is true that students do not need to complete their bachelor's degree in order to be considered for admission here at SCO. Although, as you can tell, it makes them a much stronger candidate to have done so. We enter maybe one, maybe two students each cycle that we consider to be non-degree, that are not planning to complete their degree. The hard requirement is that they have 90 credit hours at an undergraduate institution, but it's going to make them a much stronger candidate to go ahead and complete that bachelor's degree. And just like it is with many health professions, that bachelor's degree doesn't necessarily need to be in a science, in biology or chemistry. We have students come to us that studied Spanish, that studied English, and all sorts of things. So naturally, we do have a list of prerequisite courses that the students are required to take, and I have a shot of what those are in a future slide I'll show you. They're pretty standard. So again, we accept students all the time that come to us with varied backgrounds, academically and otherwise. This shows you just where all of our students come from. Being a private institution, we don't have a certain quota for students from Tennessee to fill, or even from the region. Sorry, we're just tending to have technical difficulties here. I'm not sure what's happening, but let's get back to the screen. All right, so again, you can see a snapshot of our student body and where they come from. Naturally, we do get a lot of students from the Southeast, but you can see we get students from across the country, and we like to have that diversity. We like to have students from different areas with their unique perspectives who can tell each other about what the field of optometry is like in their home state and whatnot, and go back to those states to spread the word. We do accept students that are international as well, so long as they follow the same credentials, take the same prerequisites that our regional students do. Okay, and so we mentioned a couple times the eye center that is affiliated with our school. It is the biggest eye center in the country and the second biggest in the world. It is a pretty big facility. I think we see over 60,000 patients in a year or so. And we have different suites that the center is actually designed to have. We break it up into different suites that focus on different specialty areas. So we have a very large primary care suite in the eye center. We have a suite for teens. We have a technology suite, vision therapy suite, so on and so forth. So students kind of circulate through and get specialized training in those areas. We also have, in this photo, you can see our advanced procedure suite, and that enables us to bring in ophthalmologists to perform surgeries or to perform procedures that our students can then witness from that back room there. We also have distance learning, so we can video in from different facilities across the city so students can see things being done. And that bottom picture there, that smaller picture, shows you the replica that we have. We have two of these rooms in the eye center. We have professors who have gone out to where part 3 of the board examinations take place. All students from any school of optometry have to physically go to Charlotte, North Carolina to take the 3rd part of their boards, where they actually demonstrate the skills that they've learned. And some of our professors went out to see what these facilities look like and brought that knowledge back so that we could design these rooms to be replicas of what the students would then use for that part 3 of the board. So down to the same technology, the students can practice here, they can videotape themselves and critique themselves later. So we feel like this is a great thing that we have to help students prep for that very important test. And this gives you a breakdown of the clinical nature of the program, where our students get that hands-on training with patients. For the 4-year curriculum, the first year really focuses on didactic lecture-style classes and lab experiences. Our students do start learning lab skills from day 1, but it's really in their 2nd year, after they've had that year of training in the lab, that they start to see in one way, shape, or form patients. So in the 2nd year, those encounters are things like school visits. We have school screening program where we visit schools throughout Shelby County. So that's the type of experience that students have in their 2nd year. They do some shadowing at times in the clinic as well. But in their 3rd years, when they're heavily in the clinic, spending the majority of their time seeing patients in the clinic, it is a 4 student to 1 staff doctor ratio. So they have that hands-on experience learning from the staff doctors there. And that's where, again, where they spend the most of their time in their 3rd year. And then into the 4th year, the students will do externships. They do 3 semesters of externships, summer, fall, and spring. And one of those semesters would be in one of our facilities on campus here in Memphis. The second would be in a private practice somewhere across the country. It could be here in Memphis, it could be elsewhere. And then a 3rd semester would be in an institutional setting, somewhere like a VA. So our students work pretty well with one another. There's a Google Doc I think they share where they post the facilities that they're interested in, and they can see if others are interested in the same facilities and work together, so that if there is any competition for a site, they can say, well, I'll go in the fall term, you can go in the spring term. Some of them look at it as a way to get specialized training in an area of interest. Maybe it's vision therapy, so they go to a place that specializes in vision therapy. Other students choose to go closer to where they intend to practice after graduation, so maybe they go to their home state that they'd like to return to, so they can learn about the field in that state, start networking, so on and so forth. So in total, across the 4 years, the students do see almost 3,000 patients, and this is a pretty significant number. It's definitely something we want students to feel comfortable doing when they graduate and they get their license and they're out in the field. They feel very comfortable meeting with patients. They've seen a lot through the clinical experience, and they're ready to rock and roll. And then a quick note about our scholarship program is finances, of course, are a big concern of our students, and knowing what debt load they're going to take on. Sunnie talked a little bit about our contract seat program, but I did want to make sure that y'all know that we have a pretty extensive scholarship program as well. And this scholarship program that you're seeing details for here is for our entering students. Again, with a class size of 136, we generally have around 50 scholarships that we will award to our incoming class, and those range anywhere from $1,000 to $15,000, and that will likely go up to $20,000 in this next year. And that's a per student per year basis. So these grant amounts are eligible, or students are eligible to get this amount each year, so long as they maintain the required GPA. And so one thing to note is that we do try to prioritize our non-regional students, or students who are not eligible or do not receive a contract seat for scholarships. That way we can get as much funding to as many students as possible. These are all merit-based, so we would consider the same credentials that we're looking at for admission, generally speaking, and it is based on a student's application to the program. There isn't a separate application for scholarship. So we're looking at the same kinds of things like GPA, OAT, experience in the field, so on and so forth. And I'm going to get into a little bit about the admissions process. Here you see the prerequisite courses that we require for our students, and they're pretty, par for the course when it comes to optometry schools and medical professions in general. So of course they have to take their basic biologies, chemistries, and physics, all with labs. Microbiology, a single course with lab, organic chemistry, a single course with lab, and then biochemistry. In addition to those sciences, we do also require calculus, statistics, a general psych course, a year of social science, so 2 semesters, and then 2 semesters of English as well. So this is the minimum in terms of prerequisite courses. Students can work on these all the way through until they start the program, so they can be finishing prerequisites while they're working on the application. They just want to be mindful of the classes that are going to prepare them for that admissions, that entrance exam, the OAT. So the OAT is going to test them on the basic biologies, chemistries, and physics. It's also going to test them on organic chemistry, and there is a reading comprehension section and a quantitative reasoning section as well. So the students want to be mindful of the progression of courses. They want to get in those basic sciences, that organic chem class by the time they plan to take their OAT. And this entire process for applying starts a year in advance, and so the ideal time frame, best case scenario for students to look at taking the OAT would be in the early parts of the summer before they want to enroll in the program. So if a student wants to enroll in fall 2019, we enter all of our students in the fall. So if they want to enroll in fall 2019, they could start applying as early as July of 2018, so this summer, and having that OAT done and out of the way by that time is going to put them in a really good spot competitively. So having those relevant prerequisites done before then to give them time to prepare and take the OAT is what they want to be mindful of. I see a question that popped up. Do you accept AP credits? Yes, we do. If we see them on the undergraduate transcript, we will accept them. And this is the application process in a nutshell. There is a centralized application system that all the schools and colleges of optometry use. It's called OptomCAS, Optometry CAS, Centralized Application System. So I mentioned the cycle there. Our cycle is July 1 through March 1. It does vary to some degree across institutions. And so the OptomCAS application is where the students are going to submit the bulk of their application materials. So they'll put in all of their classes, they'll send transcripts to OptomCAS, they'll write about their shadowing experience, about any extracurriculars. There's one essay that they have to respond to on OptomCAS. They request letters of reference through this system as well. They indicate the students that they indicate the institutions that they intend to apply to on OptomCAS, and they pay per institution. So it's you see there, $170 application fee plus $70 for each additional school. So $170 for one institution and then $70 each beyond that. And then those schools that they designate have access to all of that information that they submit. The schools do have some customized aspects of the application that might vary from school to school within the OptomCAS system. We also require a separate supplemental application. It's a pretty brief form that students can find on our website, allows us to collect a little bit of demographic information about them, and it allows us to start their file to review their credentials while they're still working on the OptomCAS application. So it takes a little while for students to gather and submit all of the materials on OptomCAS. So by submitting the supplemental application allows us to start working with them a little bit sooner. We've outlined here the different elements of those applications. I mentioned to you the OAT. A quick note about that is that students can take it multiple times. We will see all of their scores, so there's not a way to hide certain scores. We get this question a lot from students, but we tend to give stronger weight to the higher of the scores if students have multiple on their file. All right, so that's it in a nutshell. This is the admissions process overall. So the students submit their OptomCAS application. It takes a little while for that file to verify because the students have to send OptomCAS their transcripts, and then OptomCAS reviews the transcripts and make sure that everything the student submitted in terms of their classes was entered correctly. We interview students on campus. We have half-day interviews here. The students meet with a faculty member. They meet with a member of the admissions team. They go on a tour that's led by one of our current students. And then they have a couple working sessions over lunch where they hear more about financial aid and housing. We have interviews primarily on Fridays, though toward the beginning of the cycle, we also interview on Mondays. And so we do have a rolling admissions process where students can start submitting applications in early July. We'll start reviewing them pretty quickly after that and start interviewing and inviting students to come to campus for that process in August. We try to turn around admissions decisions pretty quickly. So generally, it's within a couple of weeks. And then the amount of time that they're given to make their decision, because we recognize they're applying to other schools and it is a pretty big decision to make. My apologies again. I really don't know what's going on with PowerPoint right now. All right, so as I was saying, we give them some time to think things over. So the earlier on they apply, the more time that they're given to make their decision. And then a few things for you to pass on to your students if you have some students who are eager to apply to optometry school and to know what it is they should be doing to submit the best application as possible. Number one piece of advice is to apply early, because we have a rolling admissions process. The earlier they apply, the more spots we'll have available and the more funding opportunities we'll have available too. So we'll have more contract seats, which we also award on a rolling basis. Similarly with scholarships, earlier on, the more of those we'll still have available. Applying early in the cycle also gives them time if they need to make any improvements after they submit their application and get feedback from us, or even after they come in for an interview, if there's any areas that we see that there's a little bit of a deficit that we want them to improve upon, we give them the opportunity to do so before we would close their file. So if we wanted them to improve their OAT score by 10 or 20 points, or if we needed them to retake a class, or we wanted to see their final grades for a particular semester, we give them that opportunity. So by submitting the application early, that gives them a buffer of time if they need to go back and retake the test to do so, get us their updated scores, and still be considered while we have space available. It's important for students to be thorough in their application, to submit all supporting documentation. Sometimes we see in their files that students don't really go into detail about things like extracurricular activities, service activities. Maybe they don't see it as completely relevant, or they pick and choose certain activities because they think we're more interested in knowing about activities that are specifically related to medical profession or whatnot. But we encourage them to submit as much information as they can so that we can get a sense of who they are as people. We like to see students who have been involved as undergraduates because the program here is so rigorous. We want students who have experience balancing a tough schedule and who are passionate, who have interests, and even if it's dodgeball or video games or what have you, if they have an interest, they pursue that, we can see that they're passionate and that they take action to go after what it is that they're interested in life. So any kind of extracurriculars is important. We also have a strong commitment to service here at SCO. It's something that's built into our mission statement, into our curriculum. And so we like to see students who have done a little bit of service work or who have interest in serving their community and being part of that larger community. We haven't really talked much about experience in the field, so I do want to highlight that. That's a big piece to the puzzle in terms of admissions credentials. We do want to see students who have an idea of what optometry is, either through shadowing optometrists or having some work experience. The minimum that we suggest is 30 to 45 hours of shadowing, and we like to see that spread across different types of practices so students see how there's variety within the practice, either doctor to doctor or type of practice to type of practice. So if they go to a private practice, encourage them to maybe go to an institutional setting the next time around, or a commercial setting so that they can see those differences. So 30 to 45 hours is the minimum. The more, the merrier. It's not necessary for students to have paid work, to work as a technician for an optometrist or something like that, but of course that's not going to hurt. And then we have admissions officers, myself and Sunnie included here, and we encourage students or yourselves even to reach out with any questions that you have or that the students have, we can work with them. We can take a look at their transcripts and advise them on, whether what they're doing is looking good, or if they need to maybe retake the OAT or what have you, do some more shadowing. We're happy to work individually with students on that. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. I did see a few questions pop up, so do continue to put in any questions that you have, and we'll go through those.
Well, she's looking at that. I have one thing to point out about the OAT. She mentioned that we do accept retakes. We do recommend that students retake the OAT if they have below a 310 on the academic average. That's one reason we encourage them not to take the test till they're ready, is because they can only take it 3 times before they have to have special permission to actually take the test again. So if they have taken it just for fun to see what it's like, that's wasting one of their times. And also, if we see them having to take it multiple times just to get to a minimum competitive number, that becomes a concern on how well they'll do on national boards. It's a direct indicator on how well they can do on standardized tests, national boards. So that's why we always encourage them to wait until they're prepared, make sure they've got good review guides and prepared for the test and things like that before they actually take the test.
And I'll add on just to say that one of the things that I really enjoy doing in my role is I host a webinar series specifically for students. And so each month we focus on a different topic that's specifically related to pre-optometry. One of the recent sessions that we did was about the OAT. So it was tips for preparing and just some basic information about how that test is structured and how they need to go through that process. We've done webinars about interview etiquette. We've done webinars about application timeline, about our curriculum here, about what the student experience is like. So that's a really good resource you can recommend your students to check out. Recordings of those sessions are available on our YouTube page, and we do have a ton of information for students on our website as well. So we have a very well-developed prospective student section, and they can read all about the program, the admissions process. They can schedule campus visits. We love to have prospective students come visit us, and they can see more about the events we have going on and so forth. All right, so turning now to a couple of your questions. So one of the questions is, do you accept committee letters or prefer science letters? So for our letters of reference, we require one from an OD that the student is not related to, that they shadowed or worked with. And the other one would be from either a pre-health advisor or committee or a professor of a biology, chemistry, or physics class. So any of those are acceptable. The committee is fine, an individual person is fine, or the professor, especially if the student hasn't had experience working with a pre-health advisor specifically. The question, does everyone or only select students receive requests for supplementals? The supplemental application is something for everybody to submit. It is really what we use to get their file started, their physical file and their electronic file, and it's basic demographic information. So it is something that every student is asked to submit, and it doesn't take too long. It's a quick form on our website.
And that is our policy. Every school is a little bit different. Some of the schools actually have their supplemental application as part of Optomcast. Some of them have them on their websites like we do. Some of them have emails generated to them once they've applied. So every school is a little bit different with that. But for SEO, we do require they just go to our website and submit it. It's very quick, as she mentioned.
All right. So question, are there plans to require 2 semesters of organic chemistry? Does taking 2 semesters of organic help with the OAT?
We only require 1 semester. However, for many schools out there, to get to your biochemistry class, they've got to take organic chemistry. One of the things that I've done over the years when I visit the different pre-optometry clubs is ask those who have taken it if they recommend it, because based on each school, what's taught's a little bit different. And by school, I mean undergrad institution. We don't, at this point, plan on requiring organic 2. However, there is a section of organic chemistry on the OAT, so if they have organic 2, it's going to help them prepare for the test, which is a great investment for their application. So while we don't require it, we do highly recommend it, and we don't see it being in the future anytime soon anyway, being something that we do require.
All right, another question, is microbiology or biochem on the OAT? It is not on the OAT. So those are a couple classes that we often see students are finishing in their final semesters of undergrad. So oftentimes students are finishing those after they've taken the OAT and while they're working on the application. All right, so I have a great question, a little bit lengthy, so I'll summarize. So a question about recommending that students apply early but within reason, because the OAT is such an important indicator of a student's competitiveness and something that all of the optometry schools really emphasize when they're reviewing student credentials. Do we want to encourage students to submit the application before they know if they can reach a competitive score for the OAT? That's a really good question. And I think that that's a good perspective to keep in mind. Really, we, in terms of our practices here at SCO, we generally consider it an automatic recommendation to retake if a student scores under 300. So in the last several years, we have not interviewed any students who have not scored at least a 300, and that would be their academic average. They get other subscores and whatnot. So so students do need to get to that minimal competitive score before they would be admitted. So it could go both ways, and maybe Sunnie, you can add to this, but one of the things that I tell students is that the process for applying, it takes a little bit of time. So the students can be working on their application before they take the OAT, and then if the OAT is the last thing that they need to do, they can send us their scores and we can render a decision on whether they're invited for an interview pretty immediately. However, of course, if they're not going to get to a competitive score, it is a financial burden to submit the application, or it is a financial commitment. One of the things I might suggest is if you have students who are a little nervous about the OAT, they're not really sure, there are many different practice tests out there that would give them a score, so they could potentially take some practice tests and see how they do before they commit to taking it or to filling out the application. Do you have a perspective on that, Sunnie?
I actually recommend students go ahead and submit their application because A, they don't have to have the OAT when they submit it. It takes Optomcast about a month to process their application. And once we get the application from them, we can start counseling them on what they need to do. So if there is other things they need to work on while they're preparing for the OAT, like getting additional experience or maybe taking additional classes, those are things that they still have a little bit more time to work on while they're preparing for the OAT too. So nothing bad is going to happen to an application before our March 1 deadline. So it's not going to hurt them to submit their application when they still need to retake the OAT or even take the OAT for the first time. So the earlier they can get things in, the earlier we can start counseling them on what they need to do to make their application stronger. For those that are, the type A's that want to have everything done and get the OAT, just remind them they don't have to have the OAT completed when they submit the application. So if they want to submit the application in July, take the OAT in August, they can do that as well. Where it gives them time to actually have the application processed, which can speed things up for when they do have the OAT completed.
And I'll add to say that it's within the student's best interest to take the OAT as early as possible anyway. Because there is a 90-day waiting period in between, if a student takes the test the first time and they intend to take it a second time, they have to wait 90 days before they're eligible to do so. So we wouldn't want students waiting too long. We acknowledge that they want to put in the time that they need to study and prepare, but they really shouldn't wait too long before they take the OAT, just in case they need to take it a second time and have to wait that 90 days to do so. So for all students, if they can take that OAT, in the middle of the summer, then they'll be in really great shape knowing what their score is, and then still being able to get the application in early, or have that time to wait the 90 days and then take the OAT again and still be relatively within a good time frame for applying. Early application really doesn't necessarily mean July 1 or July 2. Generally, July, August, September is a good goal for the students to try and hit within. So I'd say just to encourage your students to take the OAT as early as is reasonable, so that they can go into the application process with a lot of confidence.
A good plan is usually to finish out their spring semester, give themselves a month, 6 weeks to study for the test intensely, and then take the OAT late June, sometime in July. That's the best situation because, as she mentioned, you have to wait 90 days. So if they do need to retake it, 90 days is still going to put them in a very competitive time frame in like October. So when they retake the test. So if they can get everything in early, and I encourage them to get everything in July and August, because they head back to school in the fall. They've got other things they're doing. They before they know it, it's Thanksgiving and they still don't have their application completed. So if they do it before they head back to school in the fall, that gives them time to focus more on the interview or whatever needs to be improved upon in their application.
All right, so another question, how are reapplicants viewed in the admissions process? We do often get reapplicants. Essentially, we wipe their slates clean. So we don't really carry over a lot from their application from year to year.
Basically, if someone was rejected the first time, there's something they need to improve upon. So if they contact us, we can tell them what it is they need to improve upon. And if they can get the improvement into a more competitive range, then they're going to be considered competitive just like other students. And traditionally, we're going to have, honestly, I can't give you a legitimate answer, but there's going to be several students in each class that applied the year before, were not accepted, and then reapplied, improved their application, and were accepted the second time around. But I've also seen students just apply year after year after year and never do anything different, not retake the OAT, not get more experience, not retake classes. So whatever it is that's keeping them out, if they contact us, we can actually give them advice on what they can do to make their application stronger the next year.
All right, next question. Is there a preference between molecular biology versus biochemistry? Because this particular institution requires 2 semesters of OChem for biochemistry.
And that's one reason most schools do. Most undergrad institutions that I visit do require the second organic to get into biochemistry, and that's why we encourage them to go ahead and take organic too. We will accept molecular biology as a substitute, but it does need to be molecular biology and not just a course in the molecular biology department. So if there's ever questions about a specific course, they can always email it to our director of admissions. He can review it. Sometimes he has to review it with our academic affair folks, but for the most part, either of those are going to be used as a substitute. But biochemistry, if they're trying to circumvent not having to take organic chemistry, just remind them that having organic chemistry is a good investment for their OAT scores, and how well they do on the OAT can not only affect their admissions, but scholarships and things like that too.
And then a couple quick questions to wrap up. I know we're getting close to 2 o'clock here. So what percentage of your students have work experience in the optometry office?
Well, we require all of them to have some kind of experience. Shadowing is what most of them do, but a good portion of them do have jobs where they've worked as techs in an optometry office, but all that we're looking for is shadowing. So as long as they're getting shadowing experience, that's what we're looking for, and we want them to have that shadowing experience in at least 3 different offices is what we like to see. So about 15 hours in 3 different in 3 different offices for about 45 hours. That gives them a pretty good foundation of what optometry is. And we do accept work experience as shadowing. Some schools will only accept shadowing hours. They won't accept anything that's paid, but we'll accept any kind of experience, whether it's paid or shadowing volunteer.
And then one last question, are there any open house opportunities scheduled for students?
We just had one in March. We have an event called Discover Optometry every 2 years, and that's what we just had in March, so we'll have another one in 2020. Great year for optometry. But we do welcome students to call us and schedule a campus tour. They call Rebecca or email either one and call her or me if they don't have her information, either one of us. We can set up a campus tour. We do offer the tours by appointment only because our tour guides are our students, so we have to work around their schedule. We like to let the students give the tour so that they can actually get a good perspective what it's like to be a student here and living in Memphis, because we do have students that come from all over the country, and most of them have never been to Memphis before they actually come for their interview day. So the campus event specifically, Discover Optometry every 2 years, but then we also have on-campus tours too. And then also, I wanted to invite you guys, if any of you guys are going to be at NAAHP this summer, we will be there in DC at the Health Professions Fair, and that's going to be on Saturday, June 30th, and we're going to be in booth 417F. So if you are in NAAHP this summer, definitely stop by and see us. Rebecca and I'll be there. Our director of admissions will also be there. There'll be about 5 or 6 other optometry schools there, as well as ASCO, so you can actually get information from multiple different schools if there's questions that you have about, you know, specific school policies and things like that. So definitely stop by and see us. We'd love to see you there.
All right, and thanks guys for your attention over this long hour. And I apologize again for the technical difficulties. I'm really not sure what was going on, but I will follow up with an email. I will share the link to the recording of this session, which you may not want to sit through again, but I will also share copies of the slides. You can see some of those statistics that some of you might have missed at the beginning. And then you'll have our contact information too, and you can reach out to us or share that information with your students anytime, and we would be happy to chat further.
And I have one last request. If any of you guys have pre-optometry clubs and you don't have us coming to visit you, definitely reach out to us, because I am in the process of actually working on developing our fall recruiting schedule, and we'd love to come visit campuses that have clubs that we're not aware of, or if you have a lot of pre-optometry students in general, just reach out to us. We'd love to make a stop on your campus too.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.